Hey mamas, I'm Brooke Miller, registered dietitian, certified lactation counselor, and a mama who has helped hundreds of moms feel like themselves again after baby, boost their energy, mood, metabolism, and even milk supply. Inside of the Postpartum Shift podcast, you'll learn how to take care of your health so that you can show up best for the ones you care about most. Each week, we'll tackle topics like nutrition, exercise, breastfeeding, mental health, and so much more. Plus, you'll get access to guest experts who will share ways to make your pregnancy and postpartum experience easier. Whether you're approaching the postpartum period or you're right in the thick of it, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to bring this special guest, Michele, to you today. We are going to be talking all about thyroid issues, Hashimoto's, autoimmune, and how that relates and how a lot of times it presents postpartum without moms even realizing it. So, Michele, can you just do a quick introduction, a little bit about you and your history and how you got into this?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm a health coach, and I actually got diagnosed with hypothyroidism it was like after I had done some Ironman triathlons, actually. It was crazy. Like I just didn't feel like I was recovering. And so I went to the doctor thinking I had mono, and he tested me and said, no, you have hypothyroidism. And so for 8 years, I felt better at first on medication, but then I started slowly getting worse and worse and worse. And then I had 2 kids.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And after the kids, things just, they went terribly. Like I could not get rid of the symptoms. I kept going back to my doctor and saying, what is wrong? And he would keep telling me, oh, your thyroid hormones are in range and everything's fine. It's all in your head, whatever. And then, so I went to a functional medicine practitioner and found out I actually have an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's. And that is where your body attacks your thyroid. And apparently there's a lot of other things that can happen along the whole entire thyroid process after what doctors typically test. Mm-hmm. And so I learned how to use diet, lifestyle, and mindset to really put the autoimmune disease into remission and start to feel great again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for those of listeners out there who are listening and they're not sure what autoimmune diseases are, or they've never heard of Hashimoto's, or they don't really understand how the thyroid works, can you just maybe explain what are some signs that, hey, this is something you should look into if, your thyroid is maybe not functioning optimally, some common signs and symptoms that you were experiencing, but also a lot of other moms are experiencing?
Yeah, sure. So it's very confusing in the postpartum
yes.
Part of life, because there's a lot of symptoms that overlap with normal postpartum symptoms.
Yep.
So typically it's things like fatigue, especially fatigue that doesn't seem to go away. Mm-hmm. You're cold all the time. Maybe you have cold hands and feet, or you're just cold overall. You have hair loss, mm-hmm. dry skin, the inability to lose weight, brain fog, anxiety, insomnia. A lot of times there's constipation. And one of the hallmarks of hypothyroidism versus like what you might experience with postpartum is the thinning of the outer part of your eyebrows. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's one that if you have that, it might indicate more towards thyroid issues. So a lot of times you will experience these with postpartum, no matter what. I mean, there's such a huge shift in your hormones after you have had a baby, and if you're breastfeeding and all of that kind of stuff. It's when these things don't seem to go away, mm-hmm. or if they seem to be getting worse, mm-hmm. that it's a really good idea to go talk to your doctor, and you can go ahead and ask for testing. A lot of times they actually won't test you unless you have symptoms, but if you are having these, then you're the perfect candidate to get tested.
Yeah.
And typically in the Western medical world, they're going to test you for a hormone called thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH. Mm-hmm. And if that is high, it indicates that your thyroid's not working properly. Mm-hmm. It's not producing enough thyroid hormone. So that's when they would actually supplement with a thyroid medication, like a thyroid hormone. Mm-hmm. And especially with postpartum, sometimes the postpartum issues will go away. Even if it's a thyroid issue, it'll go away after like 12 to 18 months. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to keep checking with your doctor because you may actually have a issue that goes away. But if it doesn't go away after like 18 months, then you may have more of an autoimmune based kind of thyroid issue where your thyroid is being attacked by your own body.
Well, and I think something so common, with postpartum, it's like some fatigue is normal, right? If your baby's waking up every 2 hours and you're not going to bed, very early, like we can expect some level of fatigue. What I notice a lot too with nutrition is a lot of moms will say, okay, my baby's starting to sleep through the night, and I'm also still exhausted all day long. And I'm like, hey, that's actually not normal. And just because a lot of these symptoms are common, it doesn't mean that it's actually normal to an extent. Even postpartum hair loss, it's like, well, some hair loss is normal because of the shift with estrogen and progesterone. But if you're shedding more and more and more, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, you probably also have a vitamin deficiency and possibly, a hormone imbalance with your thyroid. And so I think the biggest thing I want listeners to take away from this message is, hey, if you're struggling postpartum with any of these symptoms, let's not just assume, oh, this is just a normal part of postpartum. This is just going to get better on its own. Let's actually dive in and see, is there an underlying root cause issue that is making these symptoms worse? And a lot of times for a lot of moms, it's multiple root issues. Like I've had several moms who've said, yeah, I discovered I had Hashimoto's or, something wrong with my thyroid postpartum. I've also had other moms saying like, I went in and got my labs done and my iron and vitamin D are excessively low, like so low. I'm looking at these numbers and I'm like, well, of course you're exhausted all the time. We need to supplement you with a lot of these, foods and supplements. And then all of a sudden it's like these symptoms go away. And so I think something for just all postpartum moms to take away is get some labs done postpartum, like do it. And I would say get it done, pretty soon postpartum, within the first 2 months postpartum, but also a year postpartum. Get your labs done, get your vitamin D, get your iron, get your thyroid full panel, get your glucose, like get your cholesterol, get a full picture of what is going on beneath the surface. They even have nutrition deficiency panels that you can do that, go more in depth with specific deficiencies. But let's test out all of these things. Let's rule all of these things out because, let's say you do have a nutrition deficiency and you take supplements for it. Great. Now those numbers are in line. But if you have a thyroid issue, those symptoms are not going to probably go away to the extent that we would expect it, to. And so I think sometimes, unfortunately, especially here in the United States, I think a lot of times we do have to be our own advocates and push for some of this testing because I don't think a lot of women are going in at their 6-week postpartum check and they're not getting all these labs done. They're not getting all of these things done. And then when society is telling us like, oh, it's just normal. It's just normal to feel like crap. It's just normal to be exhausted for 18 months. Like a lot of times moms are just brushing this off and they're not going to get tested when if they have something like this going on. It's really important to get on medications and speak to your endocrinologist and get some of these things, like some of these habits we're going to talk about, in place so that they can start feeling better rather than letting these symptoms go on for, months or years without getting diagnosed.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think for a long time, I was thinking, oh, these are just normal postpartum or getting old symptoms.
Yeah.
And they're not either, right? You should at a certain point start to feel like yourself again and start to feel great. And if you are not, that's definitely a red flag. And if you have symptoms, it's something in your body is telling you, hey, look at me. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And getting so in tune with our body. And I think, a lot of times as moms, especially, we're so fixated on other people's needs and making sure that other people are taken care of. And we don't necessarily focus in and tune in, like, how is my body doing? How am I functioning? And I think that's so important to do these check-ins with yourself and see, how am I feeling? And is this normal? Is it not? Is this my baseline? And sometimes, truthfully, sometimes our baseline is not great. There's so many women walking around out there and they're like, oh, I've just been feeling like crap for, 10 years and this is just normal. And it's even that realization that, hey, we can actually feel better postpartum than we felt maybe even before we had kids. Can you speak a little bit more about why a lot of these issues tend to pop up more postpartum? Because I feel like, and you can talk even more about just age ranges and who typically experiences experiences these things. But typically this isn't something that we get diagnosed with when we're 5. Like this is something that gets diagnosed, later on in life. And a lot of moms are getting diagnosed postpartum. Can you speak on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I'm going to say like the hormones from pregnancy are a huge part of it because there's such a shift. And when you have given birth, there's just like so much going on, right? And your thyroid is one of the main hormone kind of producers. Thyroid hormone has to go to almost every cell and organ in the body. So if there is any sort of issue going on with things, if there's too much estrogen or, any of these things, then there can be issues with the thyroid. Along with that, my own, and I've also seen this through other people, discoveries have been that a lot of people with hypothyroidism and thyroid issues tend to be overachievers and perfectionists. And in the postpartum stage, we are so stressed and so, like you were just saying, feeling like we have to take care of everybody else and put our needs aside. And the stress levels are just so high. And you may not even realize it because you're so focused on your brand new little baby or trying to make sure that your spouse has food or any of these other things. And yet you are not paying attention to your own body. And so stress and thyroid stuff are like hand in hand, so close together. And my thoughts are probably one of the main causes for why hypothyroidism starts in the first place.
Yeah.
Most of the people that I work with have self-identified as these overachieving perfectionist control freaks or whatever you want to call them. And I think it's because of this. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's my theory on it, at least. But it seems like I've started to see a lot more in the scientific community as well.
Yeah.
Of, murmurings of this as well. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out in the next 10 years about it.
Yeah, for sure. I know somebody who got diagnosed with Hashimoto's postpartum, and she is that exact personality, like type A perfectionist. And she is well aware of all of those things, but it is really interesting that when we're putting this intense pressure on ourselves, can you speak a little bit on stress too, like cortisol, the stress hormone, and how that kind of impacts our thyroid and putting all this pressure on us and being perfectionist, like how that's actually maybe harmful to our thyroid and autoimmune diseases?
Well, there's like a feedback loop with your thyroid and your adrenal glands and all of the other hormones in your body. And so if you're constantly on this like drip of cortisol, it's not good for anything in your body, but it is constantly telling your thyroid to continue to pump out hormones, and it starts to kind of burn out after a while. And then you just have all of these things aren't working properly. It's just like, the constant drip of cortisol just has ramifications so much with inflammation, like chronic inflammation, which then in turn causes autoimmunity, and then autoimmunity turns and causes inflammation. And so it's just like all of these different things work together. Yeah. And so the less stress you can have, the better. And I know it's like almost impossible. So it's not like we were asking you to live like a monk and go live in a cave and do nothing, because that's not realistic, right? But there are certain things that you can do throughout a day, like take some deep breaths or notice how stressed you are, and just trying to like stop as much stress as you can, or try as best as you can to just come back to a centered kind of place is going to help you so much. And as your children get older, things will be easier.
I hope so. I keep Hopefully. Hearing that.
I don't know. I have 2 teenagers, so, it's like,
easier in different ways. You're not wiping butts anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I can go send them off on their phones for a little while, right? If I want to go do a meditation, for example.
Love it. Can't wait for that day.
Yeah. But it's just like little things that you can do, because you're building those neural pathways that tell your brain, hey, I can do this. And if you can do that more and more when you're not even that stressed, when you are very stressed, it's going to be so helpful, because your brain's going to be like, oh, I know what to do. And it's going to really help you get out of that stress.
Right.
So I really think it's just things like this that you can build into your everyday life that don't have to take a long time. I'm not saying you have to go do like an hour of meditation, any of that kind of stuff. Little things can make such a huge difference.
If you've been wanting to reach your healthiest weight and feel like yourself again postpartum without having to sacrifice your favorite foods or your milk supply, I've got a free workshop just for you. Inside of this free workshop, you'll discover how to boost energy, mood, metabolism, and even protect your milk supply. You'll learn common mistakes that moms make that actually cause exhaustion, mood swings, low milk supply, and weight loss resistance to become worse, things that moms don't even realize. And you'll learn the proven 3-step method to heal your hormones and metabolism after baby so you can go from surviving to thriving postpartum. Plus, as a free gift, you'll get my postpartum snack guide when you come hang out with us. All you have to do is click the link in the show notes to save your seat today. Spots are limited. See you there. Yeah, for sure. And while we're on the topic of just like overall habits, are there one or two things that you implemented right away on your journey, or things that are kind of the first like habits that you have moms shift when they either get a diagnosis, or maybe they're still in the process of getting diagnosed, maybe they're still going through the tests, or they're just experiencing these symptoms and they're like, I haven't done any testing yet. However, these are symptoms I'm facing. Here are some things that I can maybe add in, whether it's a diet related change, or a lifestyle change.
I think two of the biggest things, one you're probably not going to love, but I know you and I also get to do this because we have celiac disease, but trying to go gluten-free has made such a huge difference in so many of my clients' lives. There are numerous studies out there now that have kind of pinpointed the connection between thyroid issues and gluten, even amongst people that don't have celiac disease. But at the same time, celiac disease and Hashimoto's are very, very commonly paired together.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have something like type 1 diabetes, then you're going to also have that as well. Like it's the same genes that kind of produce all of these same things. So just trying to go gluten-free can make a huge difference in your thyroid health. And you may find just from doing that you may feel infinitely better.
Mm-hmm. What about somebody that you're working with who's gone gluten-free for 6 months and their symptoms haven't changed at all, their labs haven't changed, like they've noticed no difference? Then at that point, are you like, okay, we tested it out, maybe there's something else we can kind of shift, or some other tweaks we can shift?
Yeah, at that point, I mean, there's other things that can happen. Like gluten and dairy are very commonly, they look the same in the body. So sometimes the body can get confused between those. There's other certain foods that may cause inflammation, or if you do have the autoimmune form like Hashimoto's, that may cause some symptoms and things like that. So at that point, I usually have people do an elimination diet, typically something like paleo or the autoimmune protocol, because those really are targeted and designed to help you discover what like may be causing you problems and to give your gut a break so it can heal, to reduce the inflammation, and then to stop the immunity or autoimmunity. So that's not necessarily something that everyone has to do. But if it's like, if you're experiencing a lot of these symptoms, you've gone on the thyroid medication and you're still experiencing symptoms, things like that, that's where we're going to like start looking at that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I just want to preface this for anybody listening who gets a diagnosis. We both recommend, if you get diagnosed with Hashimoto's or thyroid, go get tested for celiac, go get your glucose tested for type 1 diabetes, like immediately go get those things tested too. I remember when I got diagnosed with celiac 14, 15 years ago, they immediately tested me for, type 1 diabetes, because all of these autoimmune diseases go hand in hand. But I also want to preface, don't go gluten-free for 6 months and then try to get tested for celiac, because you're not going to get an accurate result. So if you get this diagnosis and it's fresh, I would say immediately go in, get some celiac blood tests done. If those are, super crazy, you can go in and do the upper endoscopy. That's the gold standard for like actually diagnosing celiac. If that's all positive, then, hey, you have celiac. Hey, it's really fun. You get to be gluten-free for the rest of your life. I will say it's way more doable than when I got diagnosed forever ago. But I think a lot of people will go gluten-free and then they'll go in to get tested for celiac. And I'm like, actually, you're not going to get the right result. Like, we actually need to see that there's, all these antibodies in our body and your body's attacking itself. And like, you need to get those results if you're looking for an accurate result. So, just make sure that if you've gotten this diagnosis, like make sure you are actually pushing tests for type 1 diabetes and celiac because we want to make sure that if we have one of these other diagnoses that we're actually making sure that we're taking care of it. And the other thing with elimination diets too is I've talked to so many moms who do this with, they're breastfeeding and they're like, oh, I think my baby has this. And they eliminate 5 or 10 foods at once. And I'm like, hey, when we actually do that and you feel better, we don't know, was it the dairy? Was it what was it that's making you feel better? And so I think before you jump down this path of I'm just going to eliminate every single food out of my diet, we actually don't want to go about it that way because you could be unnecessarily restricting things. But not only that, if you're removing 10 things at once and then you feel better, you have no idea which of those 10 things is. And we want to make sure we are pinpointing which foods cause inflammation in my body, which foods make my body feel best. And so I just want to preface, I would not recommend just jumping to some sort of elimination diet without working with a professional because it is, I've talked to so many moms who've just come to me and they're like, oh, I've eliminated these 5 things. I'm feeling better. And I'm like, well, what did you eliminate in what order? Oh, I eliminated all of them at once. And it's like, okay, now we have to try to reintroduce one at a time to figure out which one is actually working. So I think moms are given sometimes correct information when it comes to this, but then they're not actually told, I find, and maybe you find this too, they're not really told how to go about doing this,
Yeah. And I mean, when I talk about doing the autoimmune protocol, for example, that's an actual elimination and reintroduction protocol, but it's, there's an actual rules around it and how you're supposed to go about it and how you are going to eliminate a bunch of things at one time and then reintroduce in a particular order,
not all at once,
of time, that kind of thing. So that you can determine what still at that point, after you've done some healing, is still going to cause you any issues. But the reason you take those particular ones out is because research and anecdotal data and all of this other, community and doctors and all these people have figured out that these are the things for autoimmunity, for example. Mm-hmm. But if you just remove a whole bunch of stuff, you don't even know, why are you removing them? Did you hear somebody on Instagram say remove them? That's not necessarily the best way to go about it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like that's something where people are removing things that aren't necessarily things that they should be removing, or high protein or high vitamin or mineral foods or high fiber foods. And they're like, I don't know, I was just told to eliminate these 20 foods or big food groups. And then, then they reintroduce them all at the same time. And it's like, you're getting your body no data. Now we have no idea what's actually, working or not. And so it's just don't blindly start eliminating a ton of things. And even with, the breastfeeding moms I work with, it's so common where they're like, my baby is fussy. They don't actually diagnose why their baby's fussy or what's going on. Their doctor's like, oh, eliminate these 5 foods. And then they're like, cool, I eliminated these 5. I don't know if it's helping. And then they start to eat all 5 of these foods again. And then, then they're not getting accurate information of what's working and what's not. And so I think there's a lot of people out there just blindly hearing something online and then jumping to changing to a very restrictive diet. And you can absolutely do elimination diets in a safe way. The thing with postpartum is, that a lot of people don't realize is our calorie and protein needs are really high during this time. And so we don't want to necessarily start eliminating foods that we don't need to eliminate, because now we might be making it hard to, reach our vitamin and mineral needs or our protein needs or something like that too. So definitely message for the takeaway. Don't just blindly start eliminating a million things out of your diet without understanding research, without understanding how it impacts your body. And for some people, they might eliminate 1 or 2 foods for a while substantially. They bring it back in and they're like, for me, this food is not inflammatory, but this food is really inflammatory. And now I understand my body and I understand how it works. And can you talk more about the timeline too? Because I think a lot of people think I can just do this elimination diet and in 1 or 2 weeks I'm healed and all of a sudden I'm better and I know all the foods. I don't think people understand necessarily the process of what it looks like to actually heal from autoimmune diseases. Even celiac, I think it took me probably 6 months of being gluten-free for my labs to come back completely normal. I mean, I was definitely feeling my symptoms were drastically different within a month. I mean, drastically. So I would say I definitely noticed symptoms were better, but for, your microvilli to grow back and like your body to truly heal. Can you talk a little bit about that timeline and expectations for people?
Yeah. So I find the majority of my clients, if they do something like the autoimmune protocol or paleo diet, tend to start feeling significant difference about a month to 6 weeks in. There's like some magic thing that happens at 6 weeks. I still haven't figured it out.
Yeah. I felt that way with celiac for sure. Like I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like for me, it was 6 weeks too. I remember I went outside and I like suddenly everything looked like it was in high def because everything suddenly got so crisp and clear and all colorful. And I think it was the inflammation in my brain must have completely just went like away.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, most of my clients also feel that about the 6 week mark. That doesn't necessarily mean you stop healing at that point. If you start reintroducing foods, you're going to continue to heal as long as you're not reintroducing some food that's going to cause issues. Like, so if you suddenly reintroduce gluten and you have gluten issues, you'll stop healing at that point, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But there are like, it does take quite a few months for you to actually, you can't heal. There is no cure from an autoimmune disease that I have to state that there's only going in remission. Right. So that way your body's no longer attacking the tissue. And so as you're going into this point, you're going to stop feeling symptoms because you're no longer going to have that attack, especially like if it's a thyroid, you're not going to have all this extra hormone being dumped out into your system as your system attacks your thyroid and all that kind of stuff. So like you're going to start feeling better pretty quickly. But it's the kind of thing where I want people to start reintroducing foods by 3 months in at the max.
Right.
Because you want to make sure that you have a good nutritional base, that you're getting all of the nutrients in, that you're getting all these foods. We don't need to eliminate all these food groups for so long.
Yes, I think, okay, can we just talk about how many people hear this and think like, I need to eliminate all of these foods for the rest of my life and talk about how that's not sustainable or healthy to be doing that?
No,
okay.
It's not. Yeah.
It's like, just listen to this, guys. This is not a long-term thing.
This bothers me too, because like there has been a lot of talk, like if you've heard of AIP before, or maybe even have tried it before, for a long time, people believe that you were supposed to be on it for the rest of your life. And that's simply not true. No. That's not healthy.
No.
I have a lot of people come to me that have done that for a long time, and I've had to help them figure out how to reintroduce foods because we have to rebuild their gut microbiome at that point. Yeah. Because if you remove foods for too long, then you're going to start losing foods and your gut's not going to be able to digest the foods. You're going to try to eat something like broccoli and suddenly like, oh, it's going to be terrible. Or, you're just not going to have the microbes and all of the enzymes and all of the different things that you need to be able to digest all of these foods. So it's very important to start reintroducing them as soon as you possibly can. And that's why we say like 3 months max. Sometimes people will have extra, little root causes, like maybe a gut infection or parasites or something like mold or, things like that, that they also have to address as well. But even then, still start reintroducing the foods because you've done a lot of healing of your gut at that point in time. And being able to get all of the variety in is going to be great for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk more about gut health specifically with things like autoimmune and, I definitely know with celiac too, but just in general, autoimmune diseases, Hashimoto's, and how important our gut health is?
Yeah. So if you've ever heard of the concepts of leaky gut or increased intestinal permeability, it's the idea that there are like microscopic holes within the gut lining. And if you have this and any food really gets into those holes, there's an immune layer that's right below your gut lining. And if the food touches that, your immune layer goes, oh no, like alert, alert, alert. And if it's something like gluten or something that you have a known issue to, or something that your body has already confused for your thyroid tissue, which happens often with gluten and sometimes dairy, this can cause a huge problem. But it also, even if you don't necessarily have an issue with that particular food, the immune response will cause this huge inflammatory response system-wide. And so I'm sure you've heard of systemic chronic inflammation and how bad that is for us, how it causes heart disease and all kinds of other things, right? So even if you don't have autoimmune disease, but chronic inflammation, like I mentioned before, can cause autoimmune disease, and autoimmune disease will make inflammation worse. But
It's a
even if you don't
cycle.
have autoimmune disease, it's like you don't want chronic inflammation.
No.
It's like a bad thing. So if you can get rid of the holes in your gut and heal your gut and make sure that you have the right microbes to digest the food and all of that, this won't happen. And then then your body's going to be a lot happier in general.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Do you have any quick tips for gut health when it comes to nutrition? Something that they can maybe add into their diet or just do just to start boosting that? One simple thing. I know it's like not the simplest thing. There's a lot of things with gut health.
Yeah. So I think one of the best thing that you can do that a lot of people don't do is eat fiber.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about like vegetable fibers, like
Yes.
especially like things like broccoli and cauliflower
Yes.
and like those kind of things help. They feed your microbes, first of all, and they can help build your microbiota. So a lot of people will take a probiotic thinking, okay, I have a probiotic, things are great. But it needs the food and all of that kind of stuff in order to grow. And so one of the faster ways to replenish like a depleted microbiome, because maybe you took a round of antibiotics or something, is to eat fiber along with your probiotics, and that will help. I will caution you, don't go start eating broccoli, especially like raw broccoli, if you have not been eating that on a regular basis, because you probably won't have the microbes that will be able to digest that right away, and you might feel a little discomfort.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. When I eat too much cauliflower, I get like such bad gas. It's awful.
Yeah. And that's what happens. So with things like that, I do recommend that you start off slowly. If you have a lot of problems with things like that, you can do like cauliflower or broccoli mash or in a soup, tend to be a lot easier to digest at first and kind of prime your gut. So that way it will start to be able to digest these things. And then you can slowly work up your way to like start with cooked broccoli and then to maybe raw broccoli, but don't just start off with raw broccoli.
Yeah. Well, fiber is so important. That's something that we talk a lot about inside of the postpartum reset too, is we need to be getting, as much fiber throughout the day as we can from food sources, and especially fruits and vegetables. And I think a lot of us are just not eating enough fruits and vegetables throughout the day, and just increasing our fruits and vegetables is increasing our fiber. It's helping, a lot of different things in our body. And then of course we can add in some fermented foods too. That can also help with our gut. I don't know. Kombucha is like the best tasting thing ever. I want to start making it myself. We'll see if I actually get to that point ever, but I feel like kombucha, I could drink it every day. So, it's a great
I used
way.
to make my own kombucha until my dog stuck her head into the top of the jar.
Ew.
And ran around with the jar.
That would be something my dog would do too. I'm like, can we not? Can we not, dog? Okay, awesome. So we shared some nutrition tips. Do you have any other tips for somebody who's getting diagnosed? Maybe that's more of a lifestyle tip versus a specific nutrition tips.
So we already talked about the stress, but it is really important, I think, to stress that if you notice that you are going into that overachieving perfectionist kind of mentality, that it's okay. I just want you to know it's okay to not have to be perfect. I know when I was a new mom, I felt like I had to be super mom, and you have all of these expectations put upon you. And I do want you to let you know that sometimes those are self-imposed.
Yeah.
People are probably not expecting you to do half of what you think that they are. And, if the house isn't completely clean, or if you feed your family something that's maybe not the most nutritious one night, or, things like that, life's going to go on and you'll be fine. So the takeaway from that is just don't be so hard on yourself. I think that's it's a lifestyle tip, but not really. But at the same time, I think I wish somebody had told me that when I was a new mom. I actually didn't even learn that until about 3 months ago. Honestly.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That is honestly, every time I have a guest, like I usually ask, like, what's your biggest takeaway for postpartum moms or biggest piece of advice? I can't tell you how often that piece of advice is coming up. I think every guest that has come on has said something along those lines. And it's so true. I think we as moms, especially with like our first, I don't know if you felt this way more with your first baby versus your second, but I felt like this insane pressure with my first son to do everything perfectly. I do feel like Some of us get a little bit more lax, like baby number 3 is coming now. And I'm like, hey, if I just keep this thing alive, we're good. Like, I do think we tend to ease up a little bit the more kids we have, especially with my second. I noticed a big difference. But I do think, the self-imposed pressure is not doing our body, like our physical body, our mental health any good. And we're already at risk for things like postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And, our hormones are shifting and our metabolism has shifted. Like all of these things are shifting. And just this insane pressure on ourselves is not doing us any favors at all. And some of us hold on to this pressure for years. Like you just said, you're working through this now with teenagers, and we don't want to necessarily go our whole motherhood journey feeling like this intense pressure. So I think that's such a great piece of advice. So thank you for that. Do you have any other last minute pieces of advice? Otherwise, you can share how people can find you and where you hang out.
I guess the last piece of advice would just be to hang in there. if
You're
do
doing
have
great.
Thyroid issues, then there's plenty that you can do. If you are experiencing them and they go away, then great for you. But otherwise, if they don't, you can find me at Thriving Autoimmune. And I have a lot of resources in there that you can check out to figure out like a little bit more specifically what's going on with your body and then what you can do about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much. I will link your Instagram and all the things in the show notes for our listeners so you guys can connect with her there. Thanks so much for coming on today and chatting about this topic. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and listening to the Postpartum Shift podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to me if you could share this episode with a mom friend and leave a written review. This helps the podcast reach and help even more moms. Come say hi over on Instagram at Nutrition for Mamas.